What's up, my fellow lionesses and lions? Welcome to the Project Lioness podcast, where we are here to disrupt the mainstream narrative when it comes to health, holism, and human consciousness. We are here to share bold truths about health and life from a female perspective. This episode is brought to you by our team, Inspire Co., where we stand for your health being inspired by choice rather than being inhibited by chance. Thank you for being here and joining in on these raw, real, and powerful conversations. We hope our show brings you inspiration and empowerment to overcome challenges, reclaim your life, and ultimately pursue your mission with power, purpose, and play. Now, let's get into the episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Project Lioness podcast. This is your host, Dr. Mel, and today I am joined by our amazing guest, Dr. Tiff, and she's here to share an amazing wealth of knowledge and her experience. She's a chiropractor, a healer, a leader, and up to so many things on the planet. She's also one of our Inspire Business and Alignment students, and I'm so grateful that she's here. Before we get into any content and Dr. Tiff sharing her experience of chiropractic school, how she got into chiropractic, and what it's like to go from associate to open up your own practice and buy a practice, let me share with you a little bit more about who she is, what she's all about, and what she does. So Dr. Tiff, driven by her own healing journey, is now passionate about helping people like you, other healers and leaders and entrepreneurs, unlock your greatest body's potential, and is dedicated to empowering others to take charge of their health. So welcome, Dr. Tiff, to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Mel.
Yeah, you're welcome. So tell us, I said a lot there, but tell us more about what got you into chiropractic. Tell us about your own healing journey, because I think it's cool to hear chiropractors, their own come up journey of how they got into this work. And as we jokingly say, sometimes this profession chooses us, right? Rather than us choosing it. So tell us more about your origin story, how you got here.
Yeah. So, I first found chiropractic. I'd been under care since I was born. My mom started chiropractic when she was pregnant with my younger sister, and that chiropractor just kind of shared with her what it was all about. And she was like, of course I'm going to bring my kids in. And so I grew up with that just being a normal staple, and cut to graduating, being in my first year of schooling, trying to figure out what it is that I wanted to do. I had a feeling that there was something else that I was missing. And so my mom's like, oh, come with me to the chiropractor. We'll talk about it there. And I'm sitting in the waiting room and I'm just watching, the waiting room is kind of we're right in front of a window. So it wasn't actually dark, but it was dim. People were quiet. People were in different pain or whatever. And then as they came from going back and then coming back out, they had this light to them. And I was sitting there what is this? How is this the first time I'm noticing this? And so, I was oh, I'm going to figure out what it is that they're doing, get on the table. He does his adjustment and I sit up and I'm whoa, I have no idea what that was. But yes, I feel lighter, I feel better. And so we left and I turned to my mom and I was would she be mad if I wanted to be a chiropractor? And she was oh my God, my own personal chiropractor, no way. And so called the chiropractor and was hey, my daughter's interested. Can you give her more information? And so we went back that next day and he's 6'2", 250 easy. So he's a big guy. I'm 17 years old at the time. Right. And so he walks up to me and goes, so I hear you want to be a chiropractor. And I was well, I thought so. And so he was you're going to go, to Sherman College of Chiropractic. You're going to get the philosophy. And he's you're going to work here before you go off to school and I'll teach you all the things. And so I got to, before going off to school, I got to get the, working in a chiropractic office experience, which was amazing. Yeah. And then going into chiropractic school, I started getting a lot of health challenges popping up, where I was getting, migraines every single day. Yeah. And to the point of light sensitivity would kick in. Like I would just have to lock myself in a dark room with like no pillow. I'd literally be laying there like a corpse, arms crossed over my chest, just in so much pain, like not wanting to move, praying that it would go away. And I really started like searching for like more. I was so committed to the understanding that my body could heal itself. And I knew that that power was in there somewhere. I just didn't know what the right formula for me to really unlock that. And so through that, I lost my period completely. I just stopped having anything. They found cysts on my ovaries. We're like, oh, the only way you can do it is through birth control, that whole thing. And then finally, I got a new student intern and she was learning network spinal. And she was like, hey, would you be interested? And I'm like, listen, nothing's worked so far. So don't feel offended if it doesn't work. It's not you, it's me. It's okay. Yeah, right. And I get to laugh at it now. I got on the table and like, there was just this knowing, like as soon as I sat up from the table, I looked down and like the face paper is wet. And I'm like, why is the face paper wet? I touch my face and it's wet. And I'm like, oh, I'm crying. And so you can imagine how much fun that was for my student intern, trying a whole new technique and then having somebody sit up crying.
I didn't learn this in the first seminar. Like, what?
So, but I was like, this is a good cry. I was like, I just had a feeling of like, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. Yeah. Like I had no idea where the words came from, but it was just like this knowing of like, this is what I have to do. And I have to get well enough to be able to do it. Yeah. And, that night I went home and then I got my period for the first time without any, drugs or anything like that in like 4 or 5 months.
Wow. Yeah. It's thank you for sharing that. And I know there's part 2 and 3 and 4 of your journey, but no wonder I felt called to have you on the podcast. Usually my guests, I feel very like intuitive. But it's interesting how those little signs or winks from the universe, even in the midst of chaos and turmoil and challenge, how your body or the universe, whatever, is still giving you moments of like, hey, like, don't give up. I'm going to give you one little thing on this like silver platter and the ability to like not give up on yourself and just surrender, I think is so important to mention in your story. Cause I know you serve a lot of people and I serve a lot of people and a lot of people listen to this podcast where they feel like, I've tried everything. Like, what have I got to lose? Yeah. And those winks often come in some of our deepest, darkest moments, and having the awareness of like, the universe still wants you to heal, right? Your body still wants you to heal, whatever that version of healing is. So I appreciate you sharing that. And again, it's no coincidence that like, that was my experience with network too, is, things like woke up in my body, including like cycles and things like that. So I love that. So you discovered network. You're like, all right, I'm on a mission to embrace my wholeness so I can serve others. And then you graduate, right? You graduate from chiropractic school. Mm-hmm. So tell us in that journey, like you're getting well, you're getting better, you're learning this technique, you're considering like bringing this into practice. You step into an associateship, right? Because when did you graduate?
December of 2018.
Okay, 2018. And you stepped right into an associate, right?
No. So I was looking for an associate, but I was under the radar. My heart was always sold on having my own practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was trying to see how I could make it work. Yeah. So towards the end of 2019, I started finally putting together, because it was a lot of trying to figure out where I wanted to be. You know, my parents wanted me to come back home. Certain people wanted me to be certain places. I wanted to explore more of the world, and I wasn't sure. But so I kind of settled on a place, and I like set everything up. And as soon as I opened my doors is when the COVID shutdown happened.
Right. Yeah.
And so I got like a few people, and after like a couple months of, you know, the hope of like, oh, this is all going to end, and it not ending, I was like, all right, this isn't the right time, and that's okay. Yeah. And then I had a really good friend of mine from school reach out that had an associateship opened in Boston, Massachusetts. And I was in South Carolina at the time. And I did a couple phone interviews, flew out there, got to be in the space, and was just like, yes, like, all right, I'm here, I'm going, and gonna figure it all out in the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember actually when we first connected, like some of that, what a shift for you to go in on a business, and then 2020 happens, which I think was a catalytic year for a lot of people. Yeah. Whether you allowed it to serve you or not is up to your choices. Right. So interesting timing. So then from there, what was the evolution in your journey of like eventually stepping into pursuing ownership? Because that's something I really want to pinpoint. We have a lot of people who listen to this podcast who are their chiropractors and who are of entrepreneurial spirit. And I think it's Project Lioness is all about those bold, raw, real truths. And asking you, like, what has that experience been like? And getting under kind of the surface level stuff and talking about, like, what were some of the things you faced? But tell us first, like, what has allowed you to kind of transfer into your own business now?
Oh, yeah. You know, I think it was allowing, you know, all the good and bad experiences to just be learned experiences. And, you know, through each challenge, like one of the biggest takeaways for me, and one thing that I really wanted to share, was like the listening, like learning. And I think like when we did in the IBAA, the human design, that when I like started kind of learning a little bit about the human design, it really brought to attention the things that I knew about myself, but I didn't know how to put into words. Yeah. And it really reaffirmed that the things that I knew were right. So for me, like my gut and my sacrum are like the only two areas that are solid in my whole human design chart. And so for me,
remind me are you man-gen?
Generator.
Generator. Yeah. I knew you had the generator in you. And what's your profile again? What are your numbers?
Oh gosh, I don't remember.
Okay. No pressure. I feel like you had a 5 in there. For those of you who, just to catch you up, many of you know who listen to this podcast, I've got a lot of different programs to teach healers, leaders, and entrepreneurs. And what Dr. Tiff is in is our Inspire Business and Alignment Accelerator. We recently had Maggie Hilpish. I don't know if she listened to this, but she came in and talked about human design. But I want you to keep going, Tiff, because I think that's, especially as like a woman, like really listening to your intuition, like it can be so easy to just poo-poo that. Totally. But there's so many signs and signals, even from, like you said, a cycle perspective, like that is kind of that area, right? Yeah. And body will give us feedback loops when we're not listening to that intuition, because all that wisdom is in there. So yeah, keep going, how that's like supported the business stuff.
Yeah. So that's been integral in every decision ever made. Is even throughout different times of my life when big decisions were happening, like even from moving from one associate from Massachusetts to Washington, from leaving that associateship to buying the practice, it was this voice kind of feeling in my gut of like, yes. And that's all it had to be sometimes, was just yes. Or, like, you're on the right path. Or like when I didn't listen to it, I'd be like, fuck, did that to myself. I didn't listen, and that's on me. And now I just learn, like, through each, like even just in like the span of, so September is when I sat down with the woman whose business I bought, and we just had like a brief lunch, and I like left and I just felt this, like, it just came from my gut, and it was just like this lightness, this like, yes. And it was just like, I can trust this. I can lean into this, even though there have been other stories in my life where people have done the same thing and it hasn't worked out. But there was just this knowing. It wasn't me in my head trying to convince myself, which I'm very good at. And I think most people are very good at. And knowing my human design and kind of knowing that that is not a place of truth for myself, that the gut is really what rules me and my choices. And also knowing, another thing that I learned was that I make decisions quickly. And when I stay in alignment with that, things work out great. If I drag my feet, if I make excuses, if I come up with stories of why I should or why I should not, it's not a good fit for me. And so that has really, helped me in pointing me in the right direction. What I do with that is totally, up to my own stuff. But another time where I didn't listen to it was recently in November. It was my last week at my last associateship and my first week at the business. And I woke up one morning, I had all these things planned out, and I just woke up and my gut was just like, cancel everything. And I talked myself out of it. I was like, no, I'm just being lazy. I have to go do these things. I had to take my cat to the vet, yada, yada. So I get in the car, I start driving, and sure enough, somebody hits me, totals my car. And so, and like, as soon as I saw the lady pull out, I was like, fuck. I was like, I just knew, like, again, that it was me not listening, letting like certain stories of why I couldn't do it, why like this would never work for me, and just like letting that take over my mental space, my physical space. And so, so that was just like another sign of like, cut the crap, do the work, do the stuff, this, you do this. And so those are just some examples of,
Those are great examples. And I think I want to highlight something you said, or maybe you said it underneath what you said. And I think it's all about, it's practice, because I know some people like come across and they're like, well, how do I know the difference between my intuition versus my mind versus like the stories that are not actually who we authentically are. So I'm curious if you have anything in your formula in this practice that's allowed you to like keep trusting that and create those energetic discernments. Because I know for me, I 100% agree with you. Like, learning to listen to my intuition, it has been a practice, and I still have moments I kind of let my ego take over, and I get the feedback loop, right? Whether it's like you said, the car accident or the clients canceling on you. There's so many different ways that the universe is trying to keep us conscious and awake. But I'm curious for you, like, what has allowed you to discern and like cultivate that deeper knowing where you can discern intuition versus like fear or scarcity? Because it can be very easy for people to be like, well, you want to cancel because you're scared, right? Or like, you want to cancel because that kind of bullshit that creeps in.
Oh yeah.
So tell me, like, what's been your formula for that I think would be really powerful for our listeners to hear?
So biggest thing is I live it, learn it, right? Every opportunity, every challenge that comes into your life, into your world, is yours to make or break, right? You can see something and you can be like, why is this happening to me? Or you can be like, okay, what is this trying to show me? And I think that started when I started really stepping into more of like finding that like my gift in teaching and in teaching like the somatic work and doing it and being in it and like building the relationship with my body and what that meant to me. And every single time that I didn't listen and I landed on my butt and I said, oh, shoot, here I am again. Why does everything suck? And then I go, oh, okay, let me put my hands on my body and let me figure out why. I think instead of beating myself up for not being perfect or never feeling like enough, I accepted that I am human and that I am learning, and that through each and every learned experience, to me, what has shown up is I get a patient or many patients who have gone through the same thing. And it has allowed me to meet them at a depth in where they haven't really been met before. And that like is a gift to like just be seen. And I don't necessarily have to tell them all of what I've been through. I can just say in like my body, my being, like with them when I'm looking at them, and I can just be like, I hear you. I totally get what you're going through. Let me help you. And let me show you the tools that I've used to help me get from that same space to where I am now. It's not perfect. It's never going to be perfect. I always think back to when Donnie Epstein, the creator of Network Spinal, talks. And he's like, yeah, you're never going to feel like enough because you're never going to be enough. And if you are, you've gone back to source, you're now the creator. And like, that's okay. And so I just, every time I notice myself in that space of where I'm like, oh, why didn't I see the signs earlier? I'm human, like, and I'm learning. And through each time that I land on my butt through something happening and I go, whoa, what the heck is that? I just try and reflect on it. And if I can't, I utilize a coach. I ask a question in, like the group chat has always been really helpful. Or, in some way, sometimes if I can't find it myself, having somebody else who knows me be able to help me reflect has been very helpful.
Wise words, girl. Love that. Preach. Seriously. No, I'm not just saying that. Like, there's nothing like the human experience to elicit a curriculum for you first, so that you can evolve to be that facilitator and guide for that next client that is literally like, she's owned it. And I may not know that cognitively, but there's something in my being, like as you're speaking to that embodiment piece, that I can just relax into your energy, because something in me knows like you've got the formula because you've lived it. Right. And like, that's so wise. And I align with that too. And we talk a lot about that in IBAA, which that's often like business growth comes through personal lived experiences, not just strategy or numbers or like, you got to market more. It's like, maybe it's like going through a lived experience that expands your capacity to serve, where then the clients that have been on their way can finally come in because you've expanded your ability to serve, like you said, a depth, which I love that. Like, so powerful, so much wisdom. And I like that you mentioned the somatic piece too. And I think that's really important for those of you growing your own inner intuition. For me, it's a body phenomena. It feels like a kind of uprising or more inside out versus like the noise of my mind and ego is kind of, I don't know if you feel this too, but it feels very up here. Yeah. But what Dr. Tiff said is like, unless you're connected to your body, you're not going to have that refinement of the knowing. Yeah. And that's where I think working with someone like you from the somatic piece, the network spinal piece, the guidance piece can help open up what's already in all of us, right? We all have the capacity to connect with our intuition. It may just look a little different for certain people, right? So in that, I'm hearing, knowing your intuition, trusting that you're human, and that's just part of like the lived experience, and not judging yourself and not being on it all the time with your intuition. In the process of purchasing the practice and stepping into that. I know you've gone through multiple metamorphoses, and I think it's important to speak to this because there's a lot of people who start a practice go from the get-go or go into an associateship, but I think purchasing an already existing entity in your journey is it's a unique experience that I think would be important to hear how that's been for you. What are some of the challenges that you've overcome? What are some of the things that you didn't anticipate? And how has some of the mentorship, I know you work with me and some other people, how has that supported you on top of your intuition in that journey?
Yeah, great questions. Starting from like the challenges is, I don't know, I'm still in such a state of like gratitude of just being here that even still the challenges, while I'm like, yeah, there's, like you talked even today in our meeting about you'll forever have a to-do list. Like it's going to be forever long. Like, yeah, that to-do list is there. And taking over somebody else's physical structure as well as financial structure, like all of the things that were built for, that chiropractor in mind. And so kind of stepping into that and holding the space of keeping things the same so that the people who are already there don't the safety piece. They feel safe. They feel, okay, I know what's going to happen. I know what I'm walking into, and also still making like the little tweaks here and there that are for me and that like support me in practice. It's been interesting, like dancing with that. It's like trying something here. One of the things I've been playing with is like the website. Yeah. And I always wanted a website that I would be able to get in and understand how it works and be able to change the things and not have to rely on a service to do it. And so like learning those pieces has been fun. And at one point I went in and I was like, oh, I'm going to make this change. And then like loaded it onto another server and it was like all wonky. Things were all in different places. And I was like, we're not going to do that. So I just back out and say, it's fine for right now. We're just going to leave it. Like it's serving its purpose and I'll get somebody who knows what they're doing.
Right. You'll delegate that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like this is a task to delegate, to figure this out right now.
Like, okay, got it. Not my strong suit. Don't mess with. Got it. Heard. Love that. And then, just, I think it's been really enjoyable, like for me, being able to meet the current clients and like just sitting down and like when I was in the process of buying, I sat down with as many people as I could to like just sit down and get to know them. And it's kind of like doing the new patient visit all over again. Yeah. Of like, all right, like what brought you in? How long have you been here? What keeps you here? What fuels you up? What more do you want? Do you want more? What does that look like? Do you want to work with me? Here's what working with me looks like. And that was really fun. And also, not everybody's going to want to stay. And right, like that's okay. It might not be the right time and just keep on going. There's been an effortlessness in this past like month of where I just am making the decision to kind of show up and do what I can. Yeah. And in that, like I've had all these new patients just start to come in. I've had people bringing in their kids. And for me, what always lit me up was seeing families because that's how I got under care. Was I was a kid. I was in the family. And, so knowing that like, that's one of my values and without me having to like try and market or calling or going to like these things like that, they're just like finding me that I'm like, okay, I like, this is another feedback if I'm on the right track. and like, let's just hone in on what is working and just keep going with that. So it's been really learning that way. And, you miss out on some things when you buy a practice, right? You miss out on like laying the groundwork and laying the, bringing new patients in and onboarding them and like that whole process. And so having to kind of reinvent it without reinventing it too soon, or like just changing too many things, like because there's already people, like you have to do things slow. And so navigating that has probably been one of the bigger challenges so far.
Yeah, I'm hearing what you just said, that first piece of titration. That's actually like a somatic experiencing term, is like, rather than come in and create this like big changes all at once, that can be very overwhelming for a entity, a business that has kind of a way of being.
Yeah.
And that you can't get away with that. But I love that you're taking it from this like titration of how people actually can navigate change sustainably, and titrating in like your integration, which is so mirroring of even chiropractic, right? Like sometimes you have those really big cathartic table sessions, and then other times it's like this beautiful gradual building and unwinding that leads to like beautiful sustainability. So for those of you who are maybe considering, buying a business, like listen to Dr. Tiff. She's wise. I see her growth in our program, which is really cool, but like, you don't have to come in with all this eager energy and like blow shit up, because that's can be very ego driven, versus like, okay, take a step back. What's working? And what are 1 to 2 things, maybe once a week or month, that you can slowly start to like allow yourself to come in, which I think takes a lot of humility, Tiff. If I'm being honest, like it takes a lot of humility to be like, all right, I'm going to love on these people and then allow my brand to kind of shine through. But as you said, focusing on the people and loving on them is the core of business, right? We even talked about that today in our group call in IBAA. So super wise words. I'm learning something from this too, because I was that person that started right from the get-go. So that's why, you guys, if you are a chiropractor or you're a service provider and you're looking at maybe purchasing a business, that's why I wanted to bring Dr. Tiff on, because she's got a lot of wisdom and lived experience that I may know it from like working with some clients and helping them through some reorganization, but I've never done that. Right? I've invested in businesses when they're kind of getting going, but I've never been the one to actually purchase an entire business. So I think it's wise to listen to her as we bring on more guests onto this show. So anything more, Tiff, you want to add as far as things to consider, things to look out for, wisdom that you share with new chiropractors or service providers or entrepreneurs in that kind of headspace of like, I don't know if I want to start from the beginning, but maybe there's an opportunity here to purchase something and rebuild.
Yeah, I loved the opportunity to buy a business because there is, I think, and there's a discernment, right? It has to be the right fit. It totally has to be the right fit. So do your research before jumping in. For me personally, I have to be in it. So even when I was doing my last 30 days at my previous business, every day I wasn't there, I was at the business. I was there learning, watching, meeting people, watching how she did it, listening to how she talked, and like being not necessarily like trying to be her, but finding like, okay, what is it that people love? What is it that people like came in for? And then being able to then talk to them and like, so Dr. Karen, who I bought the practice from, and I are pretty similar in the way that we practiced. And so it wasn't too big of a leap or a jump, which I think helped a lot. And I think just the energy of it, of where I was just so open to this opportunity and just so grateful for the chance to finally do the thing that I wanted. And that this was just the way. And, through each roadblock, like there was a lot of financial challenges because I was buying the business towards the end of December, and nobody really wants to loan money at the end of the year.
Right.
And so there was like so many things that I was, trying to do, and like just keeping the communication between me and the person that I'm buying it from. And, when I got the money, it was like, how can we make this so that it feels good for both of us? And, coming up with that agreement and what that looks like, and, still having her like on and being able to ask her questions and, be like, hey, I got, this random mail, or like, where does this go again? Or how did you do this? And so that has been a tremendous help of just still having her be in the space with me, kind of thing, of where I can lean on her and be like, hey, like, I think last week I dropped my bag on the USB that she gave me with all of the files for the business, and it just snapped right in two. And I was like, oh no. And I just contacted her, and she's like, oh yeah, I got you. I'll just download them all again. And so I'm like, all right, how many hard drives am I going to save this on now? Right. Learning. Right. And so thank goodness that like that relationship was good. And so I think in looking into buying a practice, who are you buying it from? Mm-hmm. Why are you buying it? And like, what is it that you want to do? Every time that I looked at multiple different practices that I wanted to buy throughout kind of my journey. And I would just kind of look, and in like patient doctor, like what would I want to change? What would I want more of as a patient? And what would I want to do as a doctor? And if there's a lot of change that you have to do, probably not a great fit. If there's like, this is like pretty much exactly how I'd want to run it, minus like a few things here or there, that's probably a better fit, because it'll ease much easier the transition. Yeah. So I would say look for those things. Those are the top things. And then just feeling it out in your body. Don't let your mind take over too much. The resources will show up how they need to show up, and it will probably not be in the way that you expect it to, because that's just the way life is. Yep. But if it's right, just trust it. It's going to happen. If it's not right, weird things are going to show up. You're going to be like, gosh, why can't this freaking work out? And it's not supposed to happen for a reason.
Yeah. Well said. Very well said. So many golden nuggets. You guys definitely, go follow Dr. Tiff. She's got some wise words. So in our closing, what would you share with people, if they're curious about support or mentorship? Again, I know you work with me and you've got some other coaches, but what have been some of the things that you've learned as far as mentorship that would be important for like a new chiropractor, or maybe a student who's about to graduate? Like, what would you share with them? And whether it's in IBAA or not, I just want to hear that what's been important for you to channel and mentorship and share with other people.
Yeah. Every mentor that I've chosen has been for a reason. While I make decisions quickly, most of the time before I make that decision, like, I've been following Mel for a long time. Like, you've been on my radar for a long time. I've been watching your things and the things that you say. And every time I read it, I'm just like, there's just this yes that happens. There's just this like, oh yes, like, Dr. Mel's been embodying the practice and the practice of practice in the way that I've been like trying to for years, and in the associateships never really got that like mirrored back. And so like when we had our discovery call, to me, like I was like, I'm already know I'm going to work with her. It's just how I'm going to work with her.
Personalities.
Yeah. And it was just when you find somebody who kind of is speaking to your truth and where you're like, yes, and I want to know how to do that.
Right.
Yes, just follow that. Yes. I've worked with, Dr. Mel and, her brother Michael, and I absolutely love the weekly call or the biweekly calls. Those are so helpful in just hearing their experience, and they're very like real and forward with it. Like, it's not frou-frou. Yeah, I'm so successful. Look at me. It's, I've hit rock bottom. Here's what I did. Right. And here's what worked really well for me. And now I get, now you get to experience, okay, now I have a higher level of understanding. And so I think for me, that was really important in a coach, and not like downsizing or trying to tell me like when things are shit, things are going to be okay. Yes. And how can we learn from this? Right. And holding you accountable at the same time of not like downgrading your experience of where you are, of being like, yeah, I feel you. I've been there. And here's how we pick up the pieces and keep moving on. And so you've been fantastic in that. I've also used Dr. Rich Gorsuch, who's another network chiropractor who is amazing at holding the accountability, and has helped me transform just my art and my craft of network spinal. And it just keeps getting better. So
thanks, Tiff. I appreciate that. I was not expecting that. I just let her riff. Like a beautiful ray of sunshine right now with the,
it's weird in Washington.
Yeah. If you guys are watching on YouTube, or maybe you see some reels of this, Tiff's like in this beautiful light and there's a little cat walking around, feeling the vibe. Something that I appreciate about having you in our container is your willingness to be courageous and ask the hard questions and be vulnerable. I think as entrepreneurs, as we grow, it's important to remember, no matter what stage you're at, to keep being vulnerable and keep being humble, because as soon as we let our pride take over and think that we know everything, that stagnates our growth. And that's something I see within you, Dr. Tiff, of how you show up being in our container now for some months, is not only your willingness to show up vulnerable, but also like your desire to support other entrepreneurs. And that's what I'm loving that like IBAA is becoming, is there's different people in different stages, but we're here to support each other and help each other win. And yes, there's other chiropractors in there, and we don't have this competition mindset because there's so many lives to serve on this planet. So I just appreciate your willingness to want to not only serve people in your office, but, students that come in when they've got questions. Like, you're such a natural leader, and everything you shared today is just like gold, my friend. So keep growing. That's, my feedback to you. And like, I see so much of like my inspiration when I was like early on in practice, like in you. And it's such an honor to like pour into someone who just holds that level of integrity for themselves and other people they serve. So thank you for trusting us in that journey. I don't take, you guys hear me say this a lot, but if you choose to invest in me, Michael, our programs, whether it's once or with me for many, many years, like I don't take that lightly, because I know that there's so many other people out there that you can work with. So I consider that an honor. So thank you for trusting me.
Thank you for having me. It's been amazing. Like, in just a few short months, how things have just transformed. And it's all thanks to your support and the support of the container that you built. And it's been amazing. So anybody who's not already in that container, like, jump in it. It's totally worth it.
Come on in, guys. I will drop the link. Dr. Tiff, if you have any links you want to share, whether it's, if you want to support students, I'll make sure that I get that information from her and drop it in the show notes, you guys. I will also drop the link to IBAA if you want to learn more and apply. I'll drop that in the show notes, because we will open enrollment here and there. We are particular of who we bring in, because it might not be a good fit for you. It's definitely not for everyone. Like, if you're so far out from starting your business, I generally like to have people who have either been in business or they're closer to that approximation, because once you're in, like, energy starts moving, and we want to be able to help you to apply it. Because that's where the value really comes in. It's like, do you have a way of practicing this and applying it in real time? So anything else, Tiff, you wanna share as we round out our session today or our podcast today?
Just thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to get to kind of talk through it. Sometimes I still pinch myself like, oh, that really happened.
Yeah. And you're going to be, I see you totally. I don't know if this is of in alignment with you and what you want to step into, but I totally just had this vision of you being like a mentor to people. I don't know if that's something that you've like thought about. I know you are, right? I know you are a mentor in like what you're already doing in your practice, but there's definitely something more I'm seeing emerge in you for what it's worth.
Totally. Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, you guys, thank you for tuning in. Again, this is the Project Lioness podcast, where we are here to support you in reclaiming your power, guide you in pursuing your purpose, and ultimately helping you play all out in life. This is Dr. Mel. Peace, love, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you for joining the Project Lioness podcast. Did you find value in today's episode? Help us impact the lives of others by sharing this podcast with someone you know who would resonate and benefit from the Project Lioness message. Excited to hear more? We invite you to subscribe on whatever platform you're tuning in on. And we'd be so grateful for you to leave us a review about what you enjoy most, as well as what you'd like to hear more of. Thank you so much for all of your support. Sincerely yours in power, purpose, and play. Dr. Mel with the Project Lioness podcast. Keep rising, keep roaring, and keep inspiring.